Welcome, my friends. Welcome to my world. I'm your host, Kevin Rutherford. It is Thursday, Cinco de Mayo, the 5th of May. We are here live. Phones are already lighting up, so if you want to jump in, you should do it right now. 855-950-3835. It is a free-for-all for this first hour. Later on this afternoon, 1 o'clock Eastern time, there will be an episode of Rolling Toe. That will be Mike and Kevin Beckett doing their show today. We are working on rolling out new shows and getting the hosts all set up to be able to do their own shows, which allows them to do more time, allows me to go on and do other shows. So we're rolling those things out every week. We will continue with that. The app is in beta, and it gets better and better every day. We're excited about that as well. Calls are coming in. I had a whole bunch of things I was going to talk about today because for some reason I thought it might be a quiet day, but we got all kinds of calls already. I do want to address one thing, and then I'll get to the calls. I've seen this a lot over the last several years that we've been talking about electric vehicles. I forget which year it was. We talked a lot about them. It was the year Tesla announced their truck, Nikola announced their truck. We talked about it a lot. There are a lot of misconceptions around electricity and producing it and converting it and storing it. And I don't completely understand it all, but I have a pretty good understanding of what works and what doesn't and why. But this is, for some reason, this seems to be one of those topics that once somebody gets something in their mind, it's really difficult to change their mind. The other, fuel tax, I've always had that problem trying to explain it to somebody, and I struggle with trying to explain that. Factoring, when we talk about factoring, I've seen rates as high or higher than 60% interest if you know how to calculate interest correctly. And that's a topic that, boy, people will just give you that deer in the headlights look and swear you're an idiot. And I'm seeing that in this topic. And I get it. We don't understand some of these things. So I thought I would just talk a little bit about this. I mean, I've heard things like, well, why don't we just have an inverter charging the batteries the whole time? Well, you can do that, but you have to have the original source of power. There has to be some original source of energy. Energy doesn't just appear out of thin air. It requires something. Motion can create energy, wind, water. We can create energy from solar. We can create energy from fossil fuels. We can create energy from friction. There's lots of ways to create energy, but it requires something. And we can't just create these infinite loops. And sometimes people get this in their mind that you could just create this infinite loop, and it can't work that way. If it did, we would be creating what's referred to as a perpetual motion machine, and it would change the entire world if you could do the things that people seem to think we could do with electricity. One of the conversations I saw in Trucking Tribe in one of the chats had kind of a new take on this. I've heard a lot of people say, well, with these electric trucks, why don't we just put a gasoline or a diesel generator on there to charge the batteries while you're going down the road? Well, in essence, what you're talking about is all of today's hybrid vehicles. I mean, we have hybrids. There's all kinds of them in the auto world. We don't even hardly pay attention to them anymore. But that's basically what that is. You've got an engine, an internal combustion engine that runs on gasoline or diesel or some fuel. We need some energy there. Then that engine creates motion in the vehicle, and then we can use the motion of the vehicle to generate electricity and charge batteries, and then at times the vehicle can run off its electric motors instead of the internal combustion engine. That's a hybrid. That's a good intermediate step to move to full electric vehicles, but they're overly complicated, and for a lot of years they weren't even all that efficient. I remember when the hybrids first came out, I remember studying the Honda Accord hybrid. It got 1 more mile per gallon than the standard Accord did. That was it, 1 more mile per gallon for all of that complexity and expense. The car was like $10,000 more to get the hybrid, and you got 1 more mile per gallon. Now, hybrids have become much more efficient than that, but in my opinion, hybrids are not the future. And really, trying to put a diesel or gasoline generator on an electric truck that's going to have a huge battery is like pissing into the wind. It's not going to work. You'd have to have such a big engine and such a big generator, and it'd be so complex. The other thing that a lot of people miss, and I can't completely explain this, but in all these methods of creating and using energy, we have to convert energy. We have to convert motion into energy. That's one of the ways we can do it. Sometimes we have to convert AC to DC, DC to AC. Every time we make a conversion, we lose energy. That's a big key. Every time you convert, you lose. And depending on how and how efficient the methods you are using to convert, depends on how much you lose. You can lose an awful lot. That's the early hybrids were not very efficient. So the conversation that I saw this time had a slightly different take on this. Their initial question was, why can the electric motors only generate power during braking? Well, the answer to that is the motor is either producing power or using power to produce motion as a motor, or when it's not driving the vehicle forward and now we have forward motion, we can then turn that motor into a generator and collect the energy of that motion. There's actually a secondary advantage at this point, because converting that motion to energy requires a tremendous, or creates a tremendous amount of drag. It takes energy to turn that generator. We're using the energy of the motion, and then it slows the vehicle down. So it acts as a brake. So when you use it this way, it's really efficient. You're using the generator now, the motor we just turned into a generator, as a brake, and that means you don't require as much physical brake. So that's a good thing. But their question was, well, why can't that just produce energy while it's going down the road the whole time? Well, the answer was that motor can either be a motor or a generator, but not both at the same time. And then the response was, well, okay, why not have 2 motors on, say, 2 wheels and 2 generators on the other 2 wheels to produce electricity the whole time you're going down the road? And it's a logical question, and they even used the example. I got a kick out of this because I had one. When I was a kid, you could buy this little generator kit for your bike, and it had a little generator, and you bolted it onto the frame near your wheel, and then you could flip the generator over, and it had a little wheel on it that would rub against your tire, and it would spin the generator. And you could then put lights on your bike, and the generator would light them up. Now, there was no battery involved at all. There was no storage system. So when you stopped moving, your lights went out completely. If you moved really slow, you had dim lights. The faster you went, the brighter your lights got. But I can tell you this. When that generator was against that wheel, you would wear your ass out pedaling. There was a lot of friction there. a lot of resistance. So yes, you could do something like this, but just because you can do it doesn't mean we should. It is horribly inefficient. You're creating more drag that the electric motors now have to overcome all of that drag. That requires more energy. So yes, these two generators could be producing electricity and charging the battery, but you would deplete your batteries faster than the generator could recharge them because of all of the inefficiencies of conversion. Converting that motion of the wheel or the vehicle into energy by putting some sort of generator on the wheel creates a tremendous amount of drag, more drag than we're getting in charging. That's the answer. And really, at one point in the conversation, somebody thought it was some sort of government conspiracy that electric vehicles are not allowed to be built that way. Well, no, there are no regulations. If somebody wanted to build a vehicle that had a couple motors and then trying to gather power from that motion, there's nothing illegal about it. We're already doing it in trucking. And like I said, hybrids already do this. But it's not the most efficient way of doing it. Now, it's always efficient to use the motors as generators and brakes. That's kind of free energy. But it's tiny, tiny amounts compared to how much energy we need to charge these batteries. I think one of the reasons people get confused about this is it's hard to fathom how much energy we have to put into a battery to move vehicles down the road. It's a lot. Much more than all these other devices we're using, and this is why we can do it now. We couldn't do it 20 years ago or 50 years ago. We just didn't know how to build batteries and other things to produce enough power and store enough power to do this, to move a vehicle down the road. Now we start talking about, 80,000-pound trucks. We're talking about really big batteries and incredible amounts of electricity. And that's why there is a concern that could our grid handle it today? Oh, hell no, not even close. I won't argue that. People say, oh, well, the grid can't handle it. That's correct. It can't. We have to fix that. Well, just like when they started building the first horseless carriages, there weren't gas stations everywhere around the country. Why would there be? Why would we have a grid that produces 3 or 4 more times electricity today than it needs to? There was no reason to build a grid like that. There is now. Going forward, we can now see that, and as we need more electricity in the grid to run all of this electric revolution we have going on with tools and equipment and vehicles, and we need a bigger grid. We need more ways of producing electricity, and we'll get there. But this idea of trying to produce electricity on the vehicle itself while it's going down the road, that we may, like I said, hybrids are kind of a transition, but they're just not very efficient. Now, there may have been a dozen things in there I said that aren't completely technically correct. I don't know. If you want to correct me on any of those things, you can. I think I've kind of got the right idea in the big picture. Let's get to some phone calls because they are getting busy. If you want to jump in, I would do it right now. 855-950-3835. We're going to get started in Tennessee today. Mike, welcome to the program.
Hey, Kevin, how you doing today?
Good. What's on your mind?
Well, you just went into the future a little bit, Kevin. I'd like to go, I guess, way back into the past and talk about roll starting a truck and a situation that happened to me. And I had a question for you. It's something that's bugged me ever since I did this. Now, going back in time, my first truck was a 1973 white Freightliner. Now, when I say that, I'm not talking about the color of the Freightliner.
Right? Well, let me tell you, the first truck, I didn't own this truck. I actually rented it. So when I got my first contract, very first, right out of truck driving school, I wasn't a company driver. I went to work for Spartan Express local, and they only used owner-operators. Well, I didn't have a truck. They had this yard truck that they said, well, we need somebody to cover all this extra work. We'll rent you this truck until you can find one yourself to buy. And it was a 1973 white, I think it was a Road Boss, though. White Freightliner Road Boss, yeah. So White Motor Company, Freightliner, Volvo. At one point, it was, I even forget how you said the name, but it was like Volvo White Freightliner for a while, because Volvo bought the whole. Yeah. So now very familiar with the truck. No air ride seat, no power steering, no air conditioning, no power nothing.
Steering, right?
Right. Yeah.
The whole thing. Now, my question, and that's how far back I go. Now, my question doesn't involve that particular truck. Here's a situation that happened to me. This would have been in 2016. I'm driving for a company truck, which would mean it was probably a 2013. It would have been a Freightliner DD13 with a 10-speed manual transmission. Now, in the old days, you could roll start a truck, obviously, right? You manual transmission, you get it moving somehow down a hill,
pop the clutch.
Pop the clutch.
Yep.
Yeah, the whole thing. So, just trying to explain that to some guys who maybe don't know what roll starting means. Going back a couple days ago when we were talking, you talked about running a rack or doing the overhead and what that actually means. So anyway, that's what roll starting is. On a manual transmission truck, you can get, if you have some momentum somehow, you put your key on, roll, pop the clutch. Basically the transmission, when it engages, will turn your truck over and you get it started. It starts.
Yeah,
right?
And just for everybody's benefit, it doesn't just work in trucks. It works in any vehicle, basically, with an internal combustion engine and a manual transmission. A motorcycle, a car, whatever. Yep. You can start them through this process, right?
Right. So that's the situation. Now I'm driving a company truck. I'm doing my food service delivery. It's 3:00 in the morning. I'm in rural North Carolina, and I get out to the truck after my delivery, turn the key, the starter starts smoking. Won't turn the truck over, and the starter's smoking. So I say, well, I guess my starter is shot.
Right.
Well, I can roll start this. Now here's the thing, because I'm parked on a hill, I still have air pressure. Obviously, with trucks, you'd have to release the brakes, so you need air pressure to do that.
Right.
So I release the brakes. Now, here's the situation, though. I can roll start it. I'm on a hill, but I'm facing uphill. So now I'm going to roll backwards. Okay?
Correct.
So I'll tell you what I did. I roll started it, but I roll started it in reverse. Because I'm figuring I'm going backwards, I'm going to roll start it and I'll pop the clutch in reverse. The truck started. Does that mean the engine's going backwards?
No.
Because I made it about 100 feet. Because I made it about 100 feet and the power steering pump blew. Are those two related?
Okay.
Did I start the truck by rolling it backwards and popping the clutch in reverse? Does the engine go backwards or not?
So let me give you the opposite example, and I think it should explain how this works, because I was confused when this happened to me. And if I'm missing something here, somebody jump in, post it on Trucking Tribe or wherever, correct me if I'm wrong on this. The way you did it is the way I would have done it as well. The opposite, if you would have tried to roll backwards but pop the clutch in a forward gear, that would turn the engine backwards. Now, most modern engines, I don't believe, this is what I don't know for sure, I don't believe that most modern engines would start. There are engines that absolutely will run backwards. One of them that's famous for it, and I had it happen to me. That's why I know how confusing this can be. The early Detroits, the two-cycle Detroits at a 6V92. Right. So I'm in a deep dock, hard pull out of there. I just loaded probably 90-some thousand pounds worth of barrels. I was running local, so I'm sure I was overweight. All I was doing was running them back to the terminal. It was about a half hour away. But I go to climb out of this deep dock, and as I started to let the clutch out, I felt it was about ready to stall. And so I pushed the clutch back in real quick to catch it, and I did. But as it almost stalled and then I pushed in the clutch, the engine started running backwards. And it will run. But you got to think about this now. You are now sucking air in through the exhaust and blowing it out through the air cleaner. That's what's happening.
Yep.
So exhaust is rolling out from under my hood. And I'm totally confused because when you do this, I hit the clutch, everything jerks, but all of a sudden my engine's still running and smoke's rolling out from under the hood, and I'm inside of a building. This dock is inside of a building. So my first thought is, holy shit, I'm going to smoke everybody out. I got to get out of here. So I throw it into low again, start to let out the clutch, and I'm not going anywhere, but I can feel all the tension in the driveline because I'm trying to back up against the dock now. Low now becomes reverse because the engine's running the opposite way. I could have put it into reverse and driven out of the dock probably, although they don't run very good when they're running backwards. They run, but I doubt that I would have had enough power. So I just turned it off. I had no idea what was going on. My father was still alive at the time, and I was young. I called up my dad, and I'm like, Dad, what the hell did I do? Because this is now my truck. I've only had it a couple months, and I'm like, what the hell did I do? And he started laughing, and he said, it's running backwards. It's no big deal. He said, just start it up right now and tell me what happens. So I started it up, and I said, it's running great. He said, put it in low. I did, and I pulled out of the dock. He said, no big deal. So when the engine runs backwards, your gears now become the opposite. So if I believe I would have done the same thing you did. If I'm moving backwards and I'm trying to jumpstart this, it's got to be in reverse the way I see it.
That's right. That's what I thought. But what really messed me up was that I drove about 100 feet. I put it in forward gear, drove 100 feet, and the power steering pump just totally blew up.
That's weird. Yeah, like I said, I know. I don't believe that today's modern engines would be able to run backwards. I think they're way too complicated. The two-cycle Detroit was such a simple engine. I don't even know if a four-cycle mechanical diesel would run backwards. I don't know. I do know the two cycles were kind of known for it. I doubt that today's engines would. So when you got it started, and let me ask you this, for that 100 feet, did it feel like it was running pretty normal?
It felt pretty normal.
Yeah, see,
it felt fine.
Even a simple engine, when it runs backwards, everything's way out of sync. It's all out of phase. You're not getting combustion when you should. It's a mess. Even though the engine continues to turn over and kind of run, they're not running right. So I think unless there's some other explanation for what you might have done, I don't believe the explanation is the engine was running backwards. I don't think that at all. But I don't know if this is just pure coincidence or something about what you did that I can't fathom what it could be, because you didn't do anything unusual. There's another way of looking at this. If you have another vehicle that can pull you, technically you don't even need to push in and pop the clutch. Just put it in gear and let the other vehicle start pulling you, and you'll feel the wheels start turning the engine, and when you get enough speed, the engine will turn over and go. So I don't see how you did anything that could have damaged anything. But here's another factor. Today's trucks are so damn complicated and proprietary, and maybe there is some reason you shouldn't do this. I don't know.
Well, heck yeah. Well, that would be the other thing, is that if you're talking about today's modern engines, well, today's modern engines most likely will be hooked up to a automated manual transmission somehow, so you wouldn't be able to do it anyway, right?
I was just going to say that we should also let people know that if you have an automated manual transmission, you're out of luck. You can't pop start or pull start or roll start those vehicles because there's no way to disengage or engage the clutch because that requires motion. It's a centrifugal clutch, and you've got to get it spinning so fast before that would work. So right,
and they're so electronic as well. So you I guess a lot of them have what would be, I guess you'd call them interlocks. You have to have it in neutral to start the truck.
There's a lot of other safety features, right? Well, so with all the weird safety features on vehicles, like your foot has to be on the brake or this has to happen. Or, that could also stop vehicles from starting this way.
Right. So, okay, that was my question for you today, Kevin. Thanks for answering it. Hopefully it'll
Matt had another thought, and he said it sounds like it doesn't have anything to do with the pop start or the jump start. I agree. But he did have an idea, maybe frying of the starter. Maybe there was something going on there that I don't know. I'm trying to think through what connection there might be there, but that seems more likely than just jump starting it. Right. And then there's that other weird possibility that it's just a strange coincidence.
It could be, and I mean, maybe that's the way to answer the question is, if let's say the engine is running backwards, that would mean your alternator is running backwards, right? All the belts are running backwards. The power steering pump is running backwards, but does that really matter to a pump? Isn't it just up and down the cylinder? It just goes up. It doesn't matter which way that pulley is turning. It shouldn't matter, I wouldn't think.
Now we're getting deeper into this, but I go back to the original. Yeah. I highly doubt that one of these engines could run backwards.
Right. I agree, and it's just something that's bugged me since I retired. I'm retired now, so I can think about a lot of different things.
Now that
where I used to think.
It'd be interesting to know if there was some connection to something that happened right then, or if it was just completely random.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I don't know. So that would be something the tribe can weigh in on this. Maybe it'll make for some debates over the next few days. So
yeah,
it should be interesting.
I think so. I'll look forward to hearing everybody's opinion on that because I'm not confident at all that everything I just said is correct. I know a lot of it is, but not all of it. Let's go to New York. Jimmy, welcome to the program.
Hey, Kevin. Thank you for taking my call.
What's on your mind today?
Well, it's a health situation. I've been listening to you for years, and I want to tell you that you completely changed my life over the years I've been listening and applying some of the things that you talk about. I had suffered with high blood pressure really bad, and I was put on medication, but it lowered my blood pressure to the point where I was like, getting dizzy and having other problems. So I changed my life. I went to keto, and I've been on that for 6 months. I lost 80 pounds.
Wow! Congratulations.
Yeah. So, just over the years, listening and taking your advice and doing some things that completely changed my life. I got that Dr. McCullough with the organic beets and stuff.
Good.
And the other things that you that I've bought from your store. It regulated me to the point where now I'm in. I used to get like 1 year at a time.
DOT card, yeah.
Well, I don't know how to say it. Yeah, so I started taking the I got that organic beet powder, and I went on keto, and it completely changed my life.
Good.
And for the other road dogs out there that listen to you, and I've been listening to you for years, taking your advice and I'll tell you, it's completely changed my life. I just this past year I got my 2-year DOT card, and
excellent.
I was like, wow, what a change!
Yeah,
and,
that's
awesome. It completely changed my life.
Well, good.
I want to thank you for that.
You're welcome. I'm glad to hear it. And that is life-changing. Losing 80 pounds, that's incredible. I mean, you think about all the benefits, the energy levels, the not all the aches and pains, not all the struggle, the, hard breathing every time you get in and out of the truck or going up and down stairs. A lot of that just goes away, right?
Well, it's funny you say that, because I was suffering with that for so many years. I'd get out of my truck and just walk around and do a check once or twice a day, and I would be breathing heavy. I'm like, geez, there's something ain't quite right. And, when I started listening to your show years ago, I applied everything that you talked about, and I made it my lifestyle, and boy, did it made a lot of difference, a lot of changes. And I feel better. I breathe better. I can walk around the block or around my truck.
Well, here's a good example. I mean, you were kind of wondering, why am I breathing so hard? Why am I tired? I can promise you this. I'm fairly physically fit right now for my age. I'm in as good a condition as I've been in any other time of my life, probably stronger in many ways. Yeah. But I can promise you, if you strapped 80 pounds to my back, and I had to get in and out of a truck and walk around and do a pre-trip, I'd be breathing hard.
Well, it got me really nervous, because I'm like, what's wrong with me? But I started applying the things that you've talked about, and, it really made a big change in my life.
Good. That's awesome.
And
go ahead.
I just wanted to call and thank you for that, and for all the other dogs out there that may be feeling the same symptoms. They'll go right away, man.
It works.
Everything that I pained about, it just went away, just like you talked about. But when I applied everything that you talked about, and some of the life changes, I'll tell you, it's right there, man.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. Hey, thanks for the call and the feedback. I appreciate it. When Lauren and I were going through some of the cases, I was looking at the notes out of one of them, and this person went through all these different attempts at weight loss. And the interesting thing was, everything they tried worked. They must have been pretty disciplined when they did this stuff, because they worked. They kept losing 50 pounds. That's a lot of weight to lose. Now, they had more to lose, but it seems like everything else they tried, they would lose 50 pounds, kind of stall out there, and then eventually gave up and gained it all back. And he went through low calorie, low fat, Nutrisystem, Weight Watchers. I mean, there were several attempts, and it was always the same. Lose 50 pounds, stall out, gain it all back, try again, until he tried keto, paleo, carnivore. Any one of those is capable of producing good weight loss. The difference is he got to the 50 pounds lost and just kept going, ended up losing closer to 100, and has maintained that weight loss for years now. Because I don't know many people that want to eat Nutrisystem for the rest of their life, or want to deal with Weight Watchers and all the points and the calculations and the tracking and measuring and weighing. And I don't know people who want to do that for the rest of their life. And we have to understand, whatever method you use to lose the weight, you have to keep using. You may be able to modify it some, like we talk about, you could use keto to lose a lot of weight and then move to paleo and watch your weight. You might still have to make some adjustments. Same with carnivore. You could use carnivore to lose a lot of weight. Then you could modify it somewhat, higher carbs, more foods, but you can't go back to the standard American diet. You can't go back to grains. You can't go back to all that processed food. You'll just end up with the same results. The difference is keto, paleo, carnivore, all these real food diets are really, really easy to sustain. I laugh because that used to be what people argued. In the beginning, they argued it didn't even work. Oh, you can't lose weight on keto eating all that fat. Oh, hell yes, you can. The more fat you eat, the more fat you lose. Then after you couldn't say it didn't work anymore because there was way too much evidence and proof that it absolutely works, then they tried saying, well, it's not sustainable. Well, why not? And nobody could ever answer that when I asked them, why not? Nobody could answer, well, it's just not. Well, that's not an answer. And I know somebody who's been keto for now, I guess it would be 30 years, 30 plus. I've been doing it for 8, keto, paleo, carnivore, some version of it, and so have a lot of other people. It is very sustainable. Let's go to Chicago. Randy, welcome to the program.
Hey, Kevin, how you doing today?
Doing good. I guess we're looking at an oil sample.
We are.
And you're
confused. The main point
are you concerned about the fuel dilution?
Well, I am, and the reason being is, if you notice on the oil sample, there should be an oil sample missing between October of last year and April of this year.
Okay.
And what happened was when I took my truck in to get the filters changed, they didn't listen to me and they dumped the oil right away. So I missed an oil sample. So
got it.
The fuel dilution that's in the sample from April only has like 21,000 miles on the oil.
That's okay. That's okay. So let me just allay your fears here. Don't worry about it. 2.3 is almost zero when it comes to fuel dilution. We don't even attempt to address fuel. Now, I'm talking about an OPS sample through our lab. So we're talking about a very specific lab and sample. Their equipment is so sensitive when it comes to measuring fuel dilution that we don't even address it as a problem until you get to about 4. And you're at 2.3.
All right.
So the other thing we could look at, fuel dilution reduces viscosity. If we thought that this 2.3% was significant fuel dilution, we could look at viscosity to verify that. Your viscosity is a little higher than I would expect it to be. Actually, it's quite a bit higher. Are you using T6 full synthetic?
I am.
Yeah,
synthetic W40.
Yeah, I would expect your viscosity to be in the high 13s, low 14s, and you're mostly in the 15s. Now, I also realize this engine, is this correct? It has almost 1.9 million miles on it?
I didn't know better. I have had an
Okay,
600,000 on the end frame.
How much on the end frame you broke up?
About 600,000
on
the end frame.
Okay.
I had it replaced. The total mileage is almost 1.9. I had the end frame done at 1.298.
Okay. So I know they flagged your fuel dilution as a level 1 green, so that's probably why you're asking about it now. You could just ignore it. We're nowhere near any kind of fuel dilution problem. I will tell you what else jumps out at me, though, I'm a little more concerned about. Your silicon's been running high, and now it's actually gone beyond the point we like to see it. So if I go back historically, we don't like to see silicon go over 10. Silicon is dirt. And dirt is very destructive to the inside of the engine. It'll polish the cylinders and, eliminate the crosshatch, and then we start burning oil. So your history, we don't want to be over 10. Yours is 9, 9, 10, 9, and then this last one was 12. You're getting dirt in the engine somewhere, and I would start looking for it.
That couldn't be just the fact that they put new oil in it?
No, new oil does the opposite. New oil, that number should go way down. If we were to sample new oil, there should be 0 dirt in it. So every time you put in new oil, you're diluting the oil that's in there, and our numbers should get better. So now that you have a 12 on this, what it tells me is there's a breach or a leak somewhere in your intake system, and it's getting worse probably.
All right. I'll pull my clean air filters out, clean them, look them over.
Make sure they're oiled. Yeah, sometimes we don't get a good enough film of oil on those, and they require that oil. That filter will not work without oil. You'll get a lot of dirt in there. It's the oil that actually attracts and holds the dirt.
Is it still about a third of a can per filter? I thought I was told that at one time.
That's probably not a bad, benchmark. I'd like to just visually, know that when I'm doing it and I'm looking at it, I didn't miss any spots. I've got a good, even coating over the whole surface.
Okay. All right. Next time I'm home, it's been a while since I took them out and cleaned them anyway. So next time I get back to the house,
check all the seals where it goes in. Make sure there's no damage to any of the seals. Check all your wraps to make sure there isn't a tear somewhere when you put it back together. Make sure it's fitting right. You don't have any gaps and it's oiled well. And if the next time you do an oil sample after doing all that, it's still high, then we need to start inspecting. And honestly, the best way to do this is also the best way, I think, to test for boost leaks, and that's a smoke test. Unfortunately, there are very, very few diesel shops around the country that have smoke machines and know how to do a smoke test. And it's really simple.
There, I'm fortunate there. I live in Pittsburgh Power's backyard over there in
perfect.
Carlisle,
they do it. They do it to almost every truck that comes in, just as standard practice.
Yeah. Hey, changing out the silicone hoses on the intake wouldn't affect anything like that. Or if I had deteriorating hoses on the charge air core?
It shouldn't, no. Now, a deteriorating hose, if it's allowing a leak, if it's allowing dirt in, that could do it, but not the hose deteriorating itself and causing that contamination, no.
All right. Because I just had a fan hub put in basically last month, and that's what whenever they took it off to lean the radiator and charge air cool forward.
That may have kind of bumped us over 12. You might have gotten a little dirt in there while they were working on it, but you've historically run right there at that 9 and 10 number, which we'd much rather see around 4 or 5. So historically, it's always been a little high on this truck, and now it went over. That usually, to me, in my mind, we've probably had a little bit of a leak somewhere, and it got worse. The only time we kind of ignore this number is if the engine itself has been opened up. At least the valve cover off. At that point, that silicon number usually jumps way up, and we have to wait for another sample or two for it to come back down.
Yeah, I did have an overhead ran up at Pittsburgh Power last year, late summer, if I remember correctly. But by that time, that number should have come down.
Well, here's an interesting thing. If I look at your sample, it was never elevated, even though they did get in there and do an overhead. What that tells me is they worked really, really clean when they were in there. Because it's really difficult to take that valve cover off, do a valve adjustment, and not have the silicon spike. When they can do it, just means they worked super clean when they were doing it.
I had Pittsburgh Power do it the last time, so that kind of answered that question there.
Right.
So.
Yep. So I would just keep an eye on it. You're not at a number. We're not seeing really elevated wear metals yet, so it's not enough dirt that it's causing a problem. But that's what we like about sampling. We catch things like this before it causes a problem.
Yeah. And I was more worried about a trend or an actual number, because it's like, okay, I replaced the oil, I think it was like last October. I think I have it marked yes. And then they oops again there at Christmas. And I'm like 21,000 miles, and then it's already shooting back up to 2.3. So
now that's such a low number. don't even worry about it at all. When it crosses over 3 and you start seeing 3.5, then we start watching closer, but I don't recommend doing anything until we get over 4. And here's one of the reasons. Even when we know there's fuel dilution in there, and the most likely cause of fuel dilution are injectors. There are a couple other things, pump, but it's pretty rare. It's almost always an injector. Mm-hmm. One of the problems we've struggled with for years now is many times you'll be at 3.5 and somebody will go put new injectors in, and the next oil sample they're at 3.9 or 4.2. We've had bad injectors. We've had, poor rebuilt injectors. We've had poor installs. So we see almost as many problems created sometimes by people putting in injectors. So we're a little hesitant to just run down and throw injectors in. They're expensive. They're getting harder to get. They don't always work the way they're supposed to. So we really kind of say, hold off till we know there's an absolute injector problem, and then let's go deal with it.
All right. Thanks for your help then today.
You're welcome. Thanks for the call. Let's go to Indiana this time. Johnny, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Kevin. Appreciate it.
What's on your mind today?
Hey, okay. I'm trying to eat carnivore, but when I do eat carnivore, like steak, shrimp, I get gout awfully bad. What's causing it? Is it some? I don't know.
Well, I'd have to know a lot more. There are foods that have what are called purines in them, and purines will aggravate gout. So meat has it, seafood has it. Some seafood is loaded with purines. Organ meats tend to be high in purines. So a lot of the foods we want you to eat, because they're the most nutrient-dense foods. Organ meats and seafood are the two best foods on the planet for nutrient density. They're both likely to trigger gout when you already have the problems that created gout. So it's confusing because the purines don't cause the problem, but they aggravate the problem. What caused the original problem of gout and is still kind of holding on, and this is where I'd have to know more history. When did you change? How long have you changed? What else are you eating when you say you're eating carnivore? Is it pure carnivore, or are there other foods still in there?
Well, I mean, like, I buy my food from Walmart, and I know that's bad. That's not very good steak and shrimp. I buy the frozen shrimp in the bags, let them thaw, eat that, snack on them. I have a George Foreman. I use my grill. I'm trying to get away with it. And every time I get a gout account, they go in and that's what it is. The purine is like outrageous, and they put me on medicine. And in about a few days, I'm done. But I don't know what else to do.
Well, what you need to do is a discovery call. I mean, we need to dig deeper. What caused the condition of gout was the standard American diet and all the fructose. Fructose is the worst offender when it comes to creating gout.
Okay, I'm pretty sure, because I was diabetic, and then this year I took off 6 months because I had a heart murmur, and I came off the road, worked at home, and I lost 50 pounds, and now I'm trying to starve myself because I don't want to, because I don't want to gain it all back, but then I get a headache. I make a headache.
Stop. You can never starve yourself to a weight because of what I said earlier. If you starve yourself to get to a certain weight, which first off is really difficult because your metabolism will keep adjusting, and you'll lose weight, but you'll also have a lot less energy. You will start to, when you starve yourself, it's almost like a bear trying to hibernate with no food. There's zero energy. That's why they sleep the whole winter, and they have to do it to survive. But you don't want your body to go into hibernation mode where it's not burning any calories because it sees there's not enough calories coming in. So this idea of starving ourselves to weight loss is stupid, and it doesn't work. Now, if you can white-knuckle your way through it long enough, of course you're going to lose weight if you're not eating enough. but it's not good for your health. And are you willing to starve yourself the rest of your life?
No.
Then why would you starve yourself to get to a certain weight? Because the day you stop starving yourself, guess what's going to happen?
You're going to get it all back.
Exactly. So don't do that. If you listen to the show, you hear me tell people, if you are hungry, eat. If you eat and you're still hungry, eat more. Never do I tell people to go hungry to lose weight. You don't have to. It's the wrong way to do it. I know it's been beat into our head forever. It's the way you lose weight. No, it's not. It really doesn't even make sense to try to do that. But we've just been brainwashed, so we still think, if I don't eat that one more piece of steak, or if I don't eat one more rib, I'll lose more weight. No, don't do that. If you're hungry, eat. But you have to eat the right food. You've got a lot going on. You really need a one-on-one. I mean, we need to dig into a NutriQ. We need to design a 30-day eating plan to kind of jumpstart this, and we might have to detox at some point. I mean, there's a lot going on, and when somebody tries to eat the correct foods, now I will say that shrimp from most places is absolute garbage now. It is nasty and polluted and toxic, and unless you absolutely know you're getting wild-caught shrimp. If it says wild-caught, you can verify that, then I would eat it. I'd love shrimp. But I will not eat farm-raised shrimp, just like I will not eat farm-raised salmon. I won't touch it. I'll go hungry before I would eat that stuff. So it's a shame that the food that should have been healthier, seafood, salmon, things like that, we have absolutely destroyed those foods by the way we raise them and farm them, and it's even worse than what we do to beef and pork and chicken. The conditions we raise farmed seafood in is just horrendous. So I would avoid those kind of things. I would much rather see somebody buy, the best quality chicken they can get, if that's what fits their budget, rather than buying garbage shrimp. So you are going to have to make some sacrifices in your budget to get slightly better quality, but we also need to work on, if you were listening yesterday when Lauren was on with me, Lauren really talks about the foundations, and I haven't talked about those as much as I used to, so it was great to have Lauren on and have her remind me. I in my mind, I know we're going to go work on the foundations, but I don't always say it. We have to go back to square one with you and work on the foundations and get you healthy enough that you can handle a good carnivore diet. Oh, and I think I lost him. Let's move on to Iowa. John, welcome to the program.
Hey, Kevin. Good morning.
What's on your mind today?
I wanted to touch back on the pit from the other day. It was a great show. I lost you, and I might lose you here on this stretch of road also.
Okay.
Again today. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
My big ordeal was the student loan debt and how stupid it is to forgive them because, they got the debt itself gets forgiven if you don't pay it.
Yeah,
Did I lose it? Oh,
well,
okay.
you broke up a little bit there, so I didn't know if you're done. I've got you back now. I said this the other day on the pit. I'm not sure why this one issue makes me so crazy. I mean, there's a lot about politics right now that's making me crazy, but this one is probably the number one for me. Any politician.
It is for me because
any politician, I don't care what party they're in. I don't care if they're Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, Independent. If you vote for any type of forgiveness of student loan debt, I will never vote for you again. I don't care what the rest of your voting record is. If you vote for something like this or support it, you are off my list forever.
Right. And I'm so adamant about it right now is because my daughter's a senior, we're looking at going to college this fall, which if this conversation goes long enough, I'll explain that. But there was one thing that I didn't hear you or anybody else that I was going to talk about before I dropped my call was, what's the one thing that could eliminate probably 90% of future, not current, future student loans?
Well, I don't know. There's several things, I guess. I've heard the government talk about making college free.
Nope, nothing government related.
Okay. I don't know.
Scholarships.
Oh, okay.
Scholarships. And I say that because my daughter just had her school. We're in a very small rural area. There's between 40 and 45 students in her senior class. They had an awards banquet 2 weeks ago to give out all the known scholarships and awards that these students have gotten this year. Out of that, her 40 to 5, I don't know exact numbers because there's been some kids come and go in the last year. And there was roughly 22 to 24 at this awards. So basically half of her class. Would you, with the community of about 4,500 people, like I said, 40 to 45 students in this senior class, would you like to guess how much they got in scholarships this year?
No clue.
Just guess. If you had an idea. 22 to 24 students.
200,000.
Close, but not even close.
Okay.
$644,000 between these students.
So
for this small of a little itty-bitty community.
Let me point out, because I agree with what you're saying. There is a lot of scholarship money out there that goes unclaimed. I went through this when my son was going,
right.
And I agreed to pay some. He got some student loans to pay, and he had to pay them back. And I also said, look, you need to look really, really hard for scholarship money, too. There's all kinds of crazy programs out there. And he did.
Oh, yeah.
And
absolutely.
It's a lot of work, but it's worth it. And he found some, and I agree. There's lots of organizations out there that, have all kinds of scholarship programs. But here's part of the problem. Even with all the scholarship money, we still have to pay a lot. Because, look, not everybody's going to get a scholarship. If they do, then obviously there's enough money around to make college free. That's not going to happen. But part of the problem
you'd be surprised in how much there actually is available.
No, but it's still not enough. And here's why. Here's why it's not enough. Because college is outrageously overpriced. And it's overpriced. And I'm
not going to disagree with that.
Because there's too much free money available. That's why it's overpriced. That's what we need to stop.
Okay.
We need to get the government to get the hell out of the student loan business. We should not be giving 18-year-olds $100,000 to go to school.
Agree.
These colleges now have these billion-dollar endowment funds, multi-billion-dollar endowment funds, because they've overcharged for college for decades. So the first thing we need to work on is getting the price of college back to where it should be. And one of the ways you do that is get rid of all the damn free money.
But what if the free money is coming from the school itself?
If it's actually coming from the school, then great. That they should use a bunch of their endowment money to put people through school. But we're not seeing enough of that.
Of that $644,000, my daughter, from an uneducated father, myself, and an educated mother, but her stepfather paid for all of her schooling, so she was able to graduate. My daughter was the highest out of that $644,000 at $114,000. $111,000 of that came directly from the college she chose to go to, and it was only because they gave her that much money. I told her, if you don't get scholarships to pay for your college, you're going to community college for 2 years. We'll figure out how to pay for it so you're debt free when you graduate from there, and you will work your butt off during that 2 years to pay for your 4-year degree.
And I agree with that.
There
and
will
I
be
think
no.
That's I get it. I totally agree with all that. Let me play devil's advocate for this issue for just a little bit. When we talk about taking taxpayer money and giving it to other people, we've done this forever since we started all the social programs after the war. Prior to that, we almost never did.
And some of them are great.
Yeah, right. But
some of them are great. Our daughter was born on Title 19 because we didn't have a pot to piss in when she was born.
Right.
But we worked ourselves up and paid off all our debt.
Yeah, we could argue whether or not those are good programs or not. Let's just set that aside for a second. But let's look at how they all worked. We took money from the people who had money, who were more successful, had higher incomes, didn't have a ton of debt, weren't struggling. We take money from them through their taxes, and we have traditionally given it to people who didn't have money, who didn't have resources, and the idea was, let's help them, let's help the people at the bottom, and then everybody benefits. And there's some logic behind that. If you don't help these people, they turn to crime, they turn to drugs. So I get it. There's an argument to be made to helping the bottom end of society. It doesn't always work the way we want it to. We've created decades of people dependent on the government, so we know that the programs aren't a complete success. They've failed in many ways. But let's look at this whole college thing. We do the opposite, whether it's with government loans or scholarships. We're taking money from the people who couldn't afford to go to college, who didn't have the resources to get to college. Maybe they don't even have the intelligence to get through college. We take money from them and we give it to the people who are smart enough, who have the resources, who have the ability to go earn enough money to go to college themselves, even scholarships. We give it to the top achievers. We give it to the athletes who might end up going on to make money professionally as an athlete. That's pretty rare, but it happens. We give it to the smartest of people. Wait a minute, those people could figure out how to do this on their own. We're taking it from the poorest and giving it to the people with the most resources. What a stupid system. And now we're asking the poorest people who did not go to college, who sacrificed to start a business or get a job, they missed out on the college education, which means that will affect their earnings for the rest of their life. We're taking the money from those people and giving it to the people who already got the damn college education. So now they have one more advantage. And now we're going to take money from everybody else and give it to them? That's what makes me infuriated about this whole topic.
But sometimes it's the parents don't know, or the kids from school don't know about how to not get student loans. If they didn't have the student loan, they may even be more successful and be able to give back to their community.
Correct. So I'm saying
a program like this.
I'm saying turn the whole damn thing into a free market. It's not now. It's the exact opposite, and we've set it up completely ass backwards. So, because again, even the scholarship programs are almost always given based on merit. You're really good at something. You're really smart. Well, wait a minute. What about the people who aren't really good or really smart? Couldn't they use a college education too? But there's no programs for them.
There are, depending on...
But it's a minor amount. Come on. You and I both know it's a tiny amount of all of that scholarship money. That scholarship money goes to people who are really good at something.
But did the person that's really good at something, did they work harder through school to become better at school?
Maybe they did. So what?
Just slack off?
Maybe they did. So what? I worked hard to get to where I am in business. I don't want some government reward for that. I don't need a government reward. The market rewards those people already. So if your daughter truly worked harder to get her good grades and to be more intelligent, learn more, good for her. The market is going to reward her. We don't need to reward her. The market will do that. If we really want to help people, let's take the money she got and give it to somebody who didn't have some of those advantages. She'll figure it out, like you said.
I can't argue it.
You and her would have decided, well, look, you're going to have to go to community college for 2 years. So what? You're still getting a damn good education. And then when you come out, then you go to work part-time. Maybe you borrow some money if you absolutely have to. You make it through your next 2 years and you move on with your life, and you're going to succeed. So the whole system is just backwards.
And it's, I guess this might be my opinion. You may agree or disagree. It's the laziness of everything's been handed out.
Correct.
And the parents are just as bad. They can just go. I got no problems with that.
Yeah, let's just stop handing this stuff out.
It would lower the cost of the colleges and universities.
Eliminate the federal student loan program
and at
today.
The same time, why
by next year,
some of these
college costs will be cut in half by next year.
And why do these college professors that have tenure need to be making $500,000, $600,000, $700,000, $1 million a year?
Correct.
Teaching a course that somebody with $60,000.
Yeah, hold on.
Or the same experience that's currently getting paid $60,000 for.
I would not care if a college decided to pay any professor any amount of money they wanted. I would not care about that if there wasn't so much government money involved. That's the only reason I care.
True.
Take away the student loan program completely, and any college...
That goes back to your free market.
Exactly.
Let the free market take care of it.
Exactly.
I agree with that, too.
Once the government money's gone out of the system, if a college wants to pay a professor $1 million a year, knock yourself out. Because some other college is going to create a better program at 1/10 of the price, and you'll be out of business. That's how free markets work.
Right.
That's why this should be a free market, and it's not. And that's why it's such a mess.
Right. And if the scholarships come from the school because they had a surplus, because they're
that's fine.
instead of using their the money to do something stupid with, I don't know what.
But we need a better system of giving out those scholarships. That's my point. Let's stop giving it to the people that already have all the advantages.
One of the scholarships she's got for $3,000, and I don't know what the total amount, because there was probably 10 students, maybe 12 that got from this. This came from a local businessman who is deceased, who him and his wife built the elementary school with their own funds, and he set up a college fund for graduates.
Excellent. I'm all for that.
Continue on.
And when it's
too. I think it's great. I'd love to do it myself.
When it's private money, then that person gets to decide who they give it to. If they want to give it to the smartest, fastest, strongest person because they want to reward them, then go ahead. Knock yourself out. It's your money.
Yeah.
But when it's government money and we have a system that's so broken, and now we want to do what I just think is absolutely outrageous, then I'm going to push back. Let's go to California. Aaron, welcome to the program.
Good morning, Kevin. The reason I'm calling today is I got an annoying little problem trying to work through. My wife's developed this widespread itchy rash.
Before you go any further,
but
before you go any further, don't tell me about the rash. Tell me about her diet.
I knew you were going to ask that. We're hardcore. We eat low carb, high fat, paleo. Been doing it for about 4 years now.
Okay.
So now, it's going to make it a little more difficult.
Well, yes and no. It's just good information. Good, but now I know where I need to be looking. Had she been eating the standard American diet, my only advice would be change her diet and let's see what happens. But we're already eating a good, clean diet, so now we can move on to the next step of troubleshooting. What is the rest of her health been like when you started eating clean? Did she see a lot of improvements in her health?
I don't know. She wasn't really super unhealthy to start with. We caught it pretty early. You know, she was only 35 when we started eating this way. So everything's kind of the same. She's been pretty good. And my question is this possibly a skincare product?
Yeah, absolutely.
Or food?
Either one, and that's what we need to start working towards. We need to start the troubleshooting process of elimination on all the things that could cause this. Now I want you to explain the rash to me. When did it start? What does it look like? Does it ever change? Does it go away? Does it get worse? Tell me about the rash itself.
Okay, it's only been happening for maybe 2 months now, and it's happened I think this is the 4th time, and it seems to set on slow and go away slow. I suspect it's taking a couple days to fully manifest, and it takes several days to fully go away. And the only real different things we've been doing, because I'm looking at what have we done different, because this hasn't been a problem in the past,
right,
is when Dr. Davis put out a Super Gut book, I read that right away and went hardcore on it. So we're consuming more dairy and way more probiotics.
Okay, so let's stop right there, because that's the most logical place to start. That those are both changes that could absolutely be the cause of this. So since we've identified a change and that change could be the cause, that's the most likely place for us to start. Dairy and skin conditions go hand in hand. Dairy can be very healthy.
I thought they might.
But dairy is one of the most reactive foods in our diet. Wheat, dairy, nuts, eggs. So several of what we consider really healthy foods on a paleo keto diet are also very reactive foods. Dairy, nuts, and what was it? The other one I was thinking of? And eggs. Dairy, nuts, and eggs. All very healthy, all very keto and paleo, but for some reason also very reactive. One of the things you can do is try to make sure you're using the very highest quality dairy, but in this case, I would just say eliminate dairy for 30 days and let's see if that fixes it.
All right, so 30 days. That was my question: is how long to eliminate it for? Because she's not gonna be happy about eliminating dairy.
Well, I'm sure she's not happy about having rashes break out all over her body either.
No, she's not.
Yeah, so let's figure it out. And maybe...
Well, I got you. I got it.
Maybe after we figure it out, we can also figure out how to allow her to go back to enjoying dairy without this problem. But rather than try to do that in the beginning, I could say, well, let's make sure you're getting, the best unpasteurized, unhomogenized raw milk. And we could try all that, but if it doesn't work, then we're not sure. It could still be the dairy. So, but if we do it this way, if we eliminate dairy completely in 30 days, some foods we can eliminate for 7 or 10 days and see a difference. Dairy, it seems like we got to go longer. If we do this and it solves her problem, now we know it was absolutely dairy. Now let's try to add back in just good, high-quality homemade yogurt and see if the problem comes back. If it doesn't, then let's add in good raw milk cheeses. Does the problem come back? No. Good. You can still eat those. So this is a more efficient way of troubleshooting without going a whole month trying to just work on the quality of the dairy, and at the end of the month, we don't know anything yet.
Okay. And we've also been making Dr. Davis's clove green tea. Any chance that clove green tea could possibly be contributing to this problem?
Well, it's not the clove green tea, but I'm assuming, and I don't remember that recipe, but that there's probiotics in the drink, right? That's the whole point of making it.
Yeah, there's a new one we haven't used before, FOSS.
So it's not the cloves or the green tea, but it could be the gut bacteria. And what could be, this actually could be a positive thing, honestly. This will be the next thing we will explore if it's not dairy. We could explore the fact that what she's seeing is actually a detox reaction, that she had somewhat severe dysbiosis. She had altered gut bacteria. And now when we introduce this new bacteria and it kills off the old, and we can get a detox reaction. We have 7 detox pathways. One of the biggest is our skin. We can sweat toxins out through our skin. And when we get die-off of bad bacteria, many times we do see skin conditions like this. So that's the next logical step if it's not dairy.
Okay. Yeah, we did do the 30 days of SIBO yogurt and follow a lot of steps to potentially catch
that could have been
dysbiosis.
The die-off. The rash could be the die-off. It could be the toxins leaving her body.
Yeah. And another question, I was suspecting it could be essential oils, specifically lemon. Some of the soaps and laundry detergents we're getting have lemon oil in it.
Possibly, yeah. Could change that too, because that's another easy one to change without disrupting your whole life. So, yeah, it could be something topical. It could be something that's irritating her skin. And essential oils, even though we talk about how healthy they are and powerful, they're powerful both ways. You use an essential oil wrong, and you can do a lot of damage.
Okay. And one more thing, is there a book I should read to learn more? This isn't a time to read like Sarah Valentine's Autoimmune Protocol or something, is it?
Not yet. I have no idea that it could be autoimmune. I kind of doubt it. And the reason I doubt it is because if you've been eating this clean of a diet for this long, autoimmune conditions tend to go away fairly easily. So we're looking at things that the diet itself, even though it's a healthy diet, could cause. And normally we don't see autoimmune conditions get worse. We almost always see them get better. But we can see things like what I just described. We can see a reaction to dairy. We can see a reaction to the gut bacteria changing and dying off. But no, I would not. Autoimmune hasn't crossed my mind yet. That would be 6 or 7 down the list.
And one, I keep thinking of more things. Okay. In the past, we've done a food inflammation test, and she popped reactive to cabbage, and we've been eating kimchi. You don't think cabbage could add to?
I don't think so. It doesn't pop up on my list of really, really reactive foods. There are things that trigger on food tests that we don't get too worried about. But the big ones, wheat, grains, dairy, eggs, seafood, nuts, those can really cause problems when you react to those. People who react to things like tomatoes or cabbage, or usually you don't see any major issues with that reaction. So again, I'm not saying it's not possible. And if you want, you could eliminate cabbage. It's not that big of a deal. You know, kind of like changing the soaps, and it's not that big of a deal. I get the big one for her is eliminating dairy, but that's the most likely, so we need to eliminate that one first.
Okay, well, we'll start there with the dairy and the lemon oil, and hope for the best, I guess.
Yeah, see what happens. We'll eventually figure this out, I promise. If you stick with it and you're eating this clean of a diet, we will figure this out. I'm going to say it's going to be one of those first 2 things. it's either a reaction to the dairy itself or the die-off, kind of the whole detox effect. Let's go to Georgia this time. Jonathan, welcome to the program.
Hey, Kevin, how are you doing today?
Doing good. What's on your mind?
I wanted to talk about your gearing ratios. I'm trying to figure out gear ratios on a rear end.
Okay.
Your spring prick works real well.
Good.
But on the rear end of most trucks, at the end of the pinion where the yoke nut is, there's a number stamp in about 95% of the rear end. And it'll be like 1447.
Okay.
Which would be like a 336.
How
divide the big by the little.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, how does 1447 become 336? Now I get it. Okay. Because this is...
47 by the 14.
Got it. This is a ratio, so that makes total sense. I was not aware of that. That's new information for me. I used to tell people, look around on your rear ends, your differentials. You may find a tag that tells you something, but I've never heard of this number and where it is.
Yeah, it makes it a little difficult to find when the differential is in, but, you can take a mirror and a screwdriver and usually straighten the end of it off.
Now, this wouldn't be, a big issue, but there is still a slight issue here that if you kept the same housing but replaced the internal gears, that number is going to be wrong.
No, because the number's on the pinion gear.
Oh, okay. Now I see. Got it. All right. Now I see what you're saying. Okay. Got it. So, yeah, that would be then. Even if it were changed out, that would be accurate. Oh, good point. Yeah, and that's new. I didn't know that.
All right. Well, I'm glad I can help a little bit. I'm a Pisco Power remote center out of Atlanta. That's the truck show.
Oh, there you go. Good. Yeah, thank you for that. One more way we might be able to help somebody with that one. Let's go to Florida. Matt, welcome to the program.
Good morning, Kevin.
What's on your mind today?
Start with several comments. The student loan thing.
Yeah.
Both you guys are correct. Listening from information from Dave Ramsey, and he has a whole program out there. And I just drew a blank on the name of it. But about student loan debt anyway. So the caller is absolutely correct. I don't remember the numbers, but it's millions and millions of dollars of scholarships that go unused every year.
Every year. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. And then probably hundreds of millions. Like I said, I don't remember the numbers, but
it could be.
You're correct too. He also has done a study, and there's statistics out there. Majority of scholarship money goes to the highest earning zip codes.
Yeah, I know it. The whole system sucks. It's one thing as a libertarian. I'm not even really wild about most social programs, even the ones that give it to the people who really need it, because I've seen so many failures in those systems. It's not that I don't want to help people who could use help. I absolutely want to help people. But I'm of the impression that just handing out money usually doesn't work all that well. So that's bad enough for me. But when we create social programs that give to the money to the people who already have the most money and the most advantages, my God, why do we allow this to keep happening?
Yeah. So, yeah, it's just amazing, and I don't want to go off on a tangent on that. Just run out of time. The guy with the starter and the power steering when he started the truck.
Yeah.
So first off, I have no idea if they're related at all. Chances are they're probably not. But my thought right away, when he said the starter was smoking and all that, if something was shorting out, then depending upon what actually happened to the power steering pump or a hose or something like that, I would have been looking there first.
Right.
If I remember right, I had a starter fry. It was right about 10 years ago. And if I remember right, I actually had a fire going, just a little bitty flame. I just knocked it with my hand and glove to knock it out. But after I disconnected my batteries, and I had a little flame on my power steering pump when that happened.
Yeah, that could be the one connection, because I was trying to figure out there's no physical connection between these two systems whatsoever. But if you had a hose running past where the starter got really hot or something like that, and if that's what the failure was, we blew out a hose because we melted it, well, okay, they are connected, but it's just a weird coincidence.
Yeah, it's just weird, but that's
right. No, that could be a possibility. Yeah, yeah, that could be a possibility.
So the electric trucks or electric vehicles, or even just electricity in general.
Right. Yeah.
It's weird how people think about it, and the whole storage of energy. I think one reason is because you can't see it.
I was just going to say, as you started to say this, it clicked in my mind. The reason people have a harder time visualizing where electricity comes from and how it's created and transferred and altered, and because we can't see it. We can physically see diesel fuel. When you're out of fuel, you know you're out of fuel, and you know that you just can't create it out of air. Electricity is the same way. I guess because we can't see it, sometimes we start to think that, well, it's just there. It just exists. No, it doesn't. It has to be created.
No. Yeah, I mean, obviously, the cars, they got a gauge on them, a percentage of battery, and they, can calculate a range. But you can look in a fuel tank and see if you have 1 or 2 gallons or 50 gallons in there.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Look at the battery and see it's got 100 watts or 1,000 watts.
Right. Yeah, that's a really good point. It's probably why we have a harder time getting our head around this.
Yep. So then the example I guess I'd like to give on the regenerative part of it, if there was a system out there that same thing, you put a wheel on the ground and turned it, used it off the motion of the vehicle, and it could actually create diesel fuel and back into your tank.
Yeah, right. Yeah, there's another good point. The interesting thing about electricity, as opposed to diesel fuel or gasoline or all the fossil fuels, there's multiple ways to create electricity. In a sense, it seems like we can create it out of thin air because we can stick a solar panel out there, and when the sun shines on it, we get electricity. We can stick a little turbine into a stream, and the motion of the water creates electricity or wind, or we can create friction, and so this is one of the reasons electricity is so damn cool, but it's also confusing. Because, well, it seems like if you can just produce all this free electricity, why don't we? Well, because we're not all that efficient at it yet. We will be. I believe there will be a time where we have houses that have 6 different ways of generating electricity. Maybe from the heat in the ground, thermal energy, maybe from the sun and the wind. And I mean, that's the cool thing about this. There's so much potential. But we look at how complicated it is to create a gallon of diesel fuel.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's what I was going to go on with, let's just say a vehicle, and we got to go change it to by the hour, so it makes more sense. But if you are burning 9 gallons an hour, and you added this thing that's going to create fuel, now all of a sudden you're burning 10 gallons an hour, but this little thing is creating 1/10 of a gallon an hour. Now you can obviously see that it's a lot.
Right.
But when it's invisible electricity, you don't understand the loss without being able to see it.
Yeah, and that's, I've even talked about the idea of using wind generators on vehicles. Could we create NACA ducts so we pull the air in without disturbing the aerodynamics too much? Even if we can, even the best system possible, At some point when that wind now hits the turbine or the fan or whatever we're going to turn, drag gets created at that point. There's no way around it.
Yep. So, and yeah, the electrical grid, people say, well, I can't handle it. I don't know that, maybe it's only certain parts of the country, or maybe it's the lane I run that it's more noticeable, but they have been upgrading electrical grids for the last 10 years enormously in the area I run.
Yeah, I'll bet.
So
I just
it's in the process.
Yeah, forget vehicles. As human beings, we just use more and more electricity every year. And now that we're switching from, internal combustion engines to run things or corded, now we're moving to, battery powered, more electric everything. And, when I walk out to my trailer now outside, you walk in most of the times and you hear a big hum because there's like 12 batteries all being charged. Because I have a lot of electric stuff now and I'm getting more and more all the time. So I'm using a lot more electricity than I used to, and that's just one person.
Oh.
But I don't go to the gas station anymore to fill up all my, internal combustion engines, and I'm pretty damn happy about that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, like you said, the whole lawn maintenance, landscaping stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, what a difference, because that stuff is also noisy.
And
actually works. The battery stuff works very well.
It's quiet. It starts. You don't even say it starts. It's kind of weird. Your internal combustion engine is either on or it's off. And you start it, and then it's idle, and then you can make it. But the electric engine, it's like, am I really starting it? I guess I'm starting it every time I push on the button. But as long as there's power there, it always starts. Internal combustion engines, that you can't say that. Sometimes they're really hard to start. So that's a huge advantage for me. The noise levels, the other day, I'm a month late getting started in my garden and way too many weeds because it's spring and that's when they all grow and I wasn't here to take care of them. So now the job's twice as hard. And I needed to do some cultivating to get all my cover crops back in. My cover crops, holy cow, they were like 4 feet tall. I had no idea they were going to grow like that. And super dense and thick because I put a lot of seed down. But the soil now is just incredible. But first I had to weed whack all that down and kind of mulch it up. So then when I start to cultivate it, it doesn't just wrap around the tines and clog everything up. So I was weed whacking a lot. I was cultivating a lot. But you know what? I never once ran out of battery. I have tons of batteries. They all work on every device I have. So, I stick one in the charger, grab another one. I could go unlimited, and I don't have to stop and go to the gas station.
Yeah, it's especially with multiple. Yeah, so one battery goes dead, it goes on the charger.
Yeah,
using the next one.
And by the time I use one or two, no matter how much work I have to do, as long as I have enough batteries, I never have to stop. Just keep swapping out batteries, and it just keeps working, and it's pretty darn cool. And I talked about this while I was on the road. I don't know why I hadn't thought about this before, but working on the coach or working on the truck, I try to carry as many tools as I can. But at some point, when you get up to the big size nuts and bolts and hardware, you just can't carry enough tools to do that kind of stuff. A lot of times you can always say, well, get a bigger breaker bar, but sometimes you can't get a bar in there. So as I'm walking around in Pittsburgh Power and I started noticing, hey, these guys don't have airlines. They're all using electric impact wrenches. Why don't I have some of those? I just totally skipped over that whole idea, but now that I have them, my God, I love those electric impacts.
Yeah, I put it off for the longest time, too, because they're not going to hold up. They're not. Right. There's no way they're going to have enough power versus pneumatic.
Right.
And, yeah, there's no there's no energy loss or power loss at all with with electric impact and all that.
They're incredible.
Even Milwaukee makes a 1-inch.
Do they make a 1-inch? Really? Wow.
Yep.
Nice. Yeah. I don't know that I need a 1-inch, but it's kind of exciting to know it exists.
Yep. So,
the 3/4 pretty stout. I even have a really, no, actually, when you and I are done, we're done for the day. I'm shocked that I have a compact 1/2-inch, and I'm shocked at how powerful it is for how small it is.
Yeah. Now that's the next thing they're going to is the mini for more compact and, the 90-degree angle heads. And
right, yeah.
They're actually, electric's going to end up having more versatile tools than air ever did.
Yep. And you're not dragging hoses around, and it's and like I said, I know I could get air pressure off the engine itself, and you got to carry hoses, and you got to keep and what are you going to do if you can't start the engine? And that was the case for me. A lot of times while I was working on the coach, I couldn't start the engine. I had the coolant out. I had things disconnected. So now if it's air pressure and I'm on the side of the road, I'm just screwed. But electric, if I have a couple batteries and, I still have tons and tons of battery power in the coach, even if the engine isn't running, and I have a generator to charge things if I want. So now I'm not ever really stuck on the side of the road with a tool that won't work.
So my last subject would be a business report then.
Are you sure you want to talk about this? They're going to call us liars. I would have called you a liar if you would have sent this to me and I didn't know who you were.
I pulled up April of last year's just to be comparison. I did not send that to you, but it actually isn't a whole lot different.
No, I know.
I'm up this year.
Yeah.
But it's let's see here. So gross, I'm up 30 cents a mile on gross this year versus last year.
And that's big. That's big. We don't talk about that like it's big anymore because we kind of got used to it. But my God, I can remember times where if you were up 30%, that was life changing, or 30 cents. That's a big increase.
But my fuel cost is also up 20 some cents a mile. But my profit is still up 8 cents, even with this high fuel.
Correct. Yeah.
It's gotten so high now, I don't like talking about how it's great for us truck drivers.
I know.
It's hurting the economy now, but it's going to do something. But
yeah, one of my topics this morning, and I didn't get to it because I had so many calls right off the bat, which I love. I want this first hour every day, or hour and a half, or 2 hours, or whatever it ends up being, to be for the callers. If I don't ever have to do an open again, that's fine. I'll do other shows where I talk about those kind of things, and I'll do my political stuff on the pit. And so if there's calls, I almost always skip whatever my open was, and I just go to them. My open this morning was I actually read an article where many of the executives of the big fleets are saying there's no problem here at all. We understand why the little guys are getting hurt on the spot market right now, and they're getting hurt, if they're not getting reasonable fuel economy. And even though fleets aren't known for getting outstanding fuel economy, you also don't see many fleets that are still getting fuel economy in the 5s. That's almost unheard of. I mean, most fleets today are probably somewhere in the 6s for an average, which means they're completely protected against fuel prices. As long as you're getting 6, which is just about the standard for calculating, fuel could go to $10 a gallon. It shouldn't affect your profit. That's why the fuel surcharge exists, and that's why it works. So these fleets are saying, look, we understand the guys on the spot market are getting hammered right now, but we're not having any problems at all. We're still setting records for profit. And they believe that, at least the executives that were interviewed for this article, they believe that this isn't even the beginning of a recession, that it's nothing more than delayed seasonality. They think that we're just going to sail right through this and everything's going to go back to normal.
and I guess we could even the same thing talking about the stock market, because I've seen many people say, "Oh, pull your money out. Everything's going to crash." But you got to realize markets are businesses, and inflation doesn't hurt business near as much as people think it does.
Right. It hurts the consumer.
Have to make profit, or they go out of business.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And everything is measured in a percentage of profit. So if your percentage on $100,000, if it's 10% or whatever, an average is, the number is actually bigger when it's on $100,000 if you're still making 10%.
Correct. Yeah. So businesses run on profit margins. When our cost goes up, we have to raise our price to maintain that same margin. But in real dollars, our profit could end up being bigger, even though we have the same margin because of what you just described. And ultimately, we know as a business, if we have to keep raising our prices, people will either stop buying our stuff or they will buy less of it. That's ultimately, in the long run, where inflation hurts business, because you can only hurt the consumer for so long before they have to stop buying stuff.
Yeah, and that's, so stock and company values will inflate with inflation. So
Right. And guess who else?
I don't know exactly where we're at.
Guess who else makes more money during inflationary times?
The government.
The government does, because taxes are almost always a percentage. So the higher the prices are, the more we end up sending to the government.
But, and also look at the debt. When we had, I don't even know what the number is any day, it changes so fast now, but 30 trillion or whatever the number we're at.
I think we're at 30 trillion now, yeah.
Yeah. But, if it actually stopped, which certainly isn't going to happen anytime soon, stop growing, well, after everything inflates by 8% a year for a couple of years, 30 trillion is a lot smaller number.
That's right. Yeah, it's easier. Yeah, it's easier to pay back debt at a time like this because you just have more cash to do it. Yeah. Yeah, so let's end on one note that I haven't even touched on yet. I would prefer to stay away from completely. Probably the biggest hot-button political issue ever in our country. And now it's back in the news in a very, very big way. And like I said, the issue itself, I'd rather just avoid. I have very, very clear, strong beliefs on the topic. To me, they're not worth talking about. And here's why I'm bringing up the topic at all, because I think this may be the one that tears our country apart. I mean, we've argued about a lot of things politically, but this is the one I think that could ultimately really, really do some damage. And I would encourage people to think this through and don't ruin relationships over politics. And this issue will be the one that could do it to a lot of people who aren't even very political. People who don't really follow politics, who probably can't name their representatives, probably maybe don't even know who the Speaker of the House is or whatever. They just don't follow it. But they'll get involved with this issue. And I'm just afraid that there's going to be lots and lots of really nasty arguing and fighting, and people are going to ruin relationships over this. And I really hope people take a minute, step back, and say, yes, it's an important issue, but do you really want to ruin relationships over this? And it's Roe v. Wade. It's abortion. It's the most hot-button topic in politics, always has been. If you go back to 1973, it was a huge, huge topic when Roe v. Wade was decided, and now it's going to be a much, much bigger topic now. But I'm just afraid it's going to be very destructive.
I don't doubt that. Every little stuff becomes hot,
right.
Explosive conversations and arguments these days. So
right.
We bring a big one out like this, and yeah,
and a lot of topics in politics are complicated enough that many people just stay out of them. They don't want to discuss the tax law change because they don't understand taxes. They may not want to discuss even student loan debt because maybe they don't feel like they understand all the underlying economics that's going on. But something as human of an issue as abortion, almost everybody has an opinion on it. Whereas a lot of political topics, a lot of people just don't care. They don't follow politics. They don't care about a lot of those topics. This one, though, touches almost everybody. And it touches them in a very powerful, emotional way. And like I say, where we are in the country right now, this couldn't be worse timing. No matter which side you're on, whether you like the ruling, don't like the ruling, it doesn't matter to me. And that's why I'd rather just not talk about the issue itself. I'm just afraid the issue itself is going to be a huge turning point for us and not a good one.
Yep. I agree. Because just to give my own, I don't know if it's an opinion or not, but being a libertarian, it's a tough call.
I
have my own personal opinion, but what gives me the right to give somebody, tell them what they can or can't do?
So I've struggled with that as a libertarian too, because that's kind of the reason why we have political ideologies. It's kind of a framework that allows us to work through these complicated issues and come to an opinion about them. And for a long time, I struggled because libertarians believe we don't really have the right to tell somebody else what they can do. But if we take a step back, and the libertarian view really goes one step further than that. You can do whatever you want as long as you're not hurting somebody else. I don't care if you want to become a drug addict and a gambler and go blow all your money and end up homeless and die. That's your choice. And yes, I know it does affect children. Children are the tough issue in all of this because parents who become drug addicts, unfortunately, they do affect their children. I struggle with that one. But this one's a little different. And again, without getting too deep into this, all we have to decide is, isn't that a living human being? It's not the woman's body. It's separate. So abortion does hurt another human being. The argument becomes, I believe anybody who is pro-abortion has to believe that that's not a human being, that it's just a mass of tissue at that point. And then the argument becomes, well, when does it become a human being? Is it heartbeat? And that's what we really struggle and argue over. But honestly, I think as libertarians, it's pretty clear. All you have to decide as a libertarian is, when do you believe that's a human being? And at that point, abortion could no longer be right.
Yeah, and on a legal side, I think that's what it's going to come down to. It's when is it a life?
Yeah, and I don't see how we can answer that legally. I mean, I just don't. It's not a legal issue. It's a biology issue. I mean, honestly, it seems to me like it's a living entity at conception. I mean, that's the biology. I don't know how you argue against that. Two cells came together and created a new life at conception. After that, it's just development. But you can't develop if you didn't create the life to develop.
There's plenty of argument on biology these days, though.
Oh, I know. Yeah, I know. And wait a minute. Before we used to get yelled at. As men, you can't talk about this because this is a woman's issue, which I also have an argument with, because one of the topics that never, ever seems to get talked about in this issue, what about the father of that child? They have zero rights, never have. We don't even talk about them. And I get it. Many of the guys skip out anyway. I understand that. But what about the guys who don't? What about the guys who truly believe that's their child? Nobody even talks about them. In fact, you're screamed at. You can't talk about this. You're not a woman. Well, wait a minute. I was half of that event. That's my child. But we don't even talk about that. You're not allowed to. You get screamed down if you do. But now, the left seems to think that men can get pregnant too. So I guess we are allowed to talk about this issue now.
Just to make a joke out of this, I'm going to put Angie on the spot. She just sent me a text. she said, "You can have my children, keep them."
Yeah, we've all had that feeling too as parents, but oh man, I thought maybe she sent you the pregnant man emoji.
Oh God!
Well, at least we can laugh about this one. We need more of that. We need people to get a little more. And I get it; it's a serious issue. I get why people are so emotional, but I'm really just afraid that we're in the wrong place in our political climate right now to have to deal with this issue. I just think it's really, really bad timing.
Yep. Yeah, and it's going to filter into other things like the packing of the court. The caller said the other day, this is going to be an issue where they could use that to change a decision.
Right. Yeah. And here's the other thing I know. I'm just going to throw this out there because I know it just happened. Giving my limited views of how I feel about this, I guarantee you there are some people out there now that will probably never listen again. That's how hot button this topic is. I've said all kinds of crazy controversial things. I have pretty controversial political views from most people. Libertarians just do. We don't really agree with either one of the two major parties. We agree with each one of them on different things. A lot of people think we're kind of middle of the road. No, libertarians aren't middle of the road. They tend to be an extreme on either party. I tend to be more liberal on some topics than most liberals are. And I tend to be more conservative on most topics than most conservatives are. I'm not the middle of the road. I'm almost the two extremes.
Yeah, well, many times, yeah. If you're a libertarian, the liberals call you a conservative, and the conservatives call you liberal. And
I know, and they both,
off,
they both hate you for some reason instead of looking at all the things we could probably agree on. But I've said lots of really controversial things over the years. All drugs should be decriminalized. I believe that. Gambling, prostitution, they should all be legal within some guidelines so that we don't hurt other people or we minimize that damage as much as possible. Those are really controversial. Most people will look at them and kind of go, oh boy, I really disagree with him on that, and blow right by it and still listen to me. But I guarantee you, if I talk too much about this topic, I'll lose listeners.
Oh. Yeah, it's, and I'm not too worried about it because I don't have a super strong opinion on how it plays out one way or the other.
Well,
like I say, I have my own personal opinion, but I guess I don't care what other people do.
It's, even though it's a really important topic and I do have strong views, it's a topic I could just stay away from. It's too controversial. There's almost not we have to make a decision one way or another. And honestly, well, might as well just throw some more out there and chase away a few more listeners. I wish people would take a look at it and realize the federal government did not outlaw abortions. And people believe that's what's happening right now. That's absolutely not true. What's happening is the Supreme Court said this is not an issue the federal government should decide. They're not making abortions illegal. They're just saying, and I agree with them, I wish we would move more issues to the state level. I don't like a centralized government, our federal government, a huge bureaucracy deciding these kinds of things. Send it to the states, let them decide, and then let people get involved in their local and state politics. And like a true democracy should, or even a republic where we vote representatives or we sometimes get to vote directly on issues, get involved then. Get involved at your state level with your beliefs. I think this is a really positive thing for both sides of this issue. but it's being treated as though the federal government just outlawed this. And a lot of people, again, who aren't political, who don't follow this, who don't understand the difference between federal laws and states' rights, they're getting overly emotional because the media and the left is whipping them into a frenzy as though the evil white men in the federal government just outlawed abortions. That's not what happened.
Oh, yeah, there's so many issues that, it should just be taken off of the federal side and
correct.
moved to the state.
We should all be happy about
the way
this.
It was designed to begin with.
Right. We should all be now. And this is, again, people who don't understand history and politics. It was the Roe v. Wade that changed this for the wrong way. We don't want the federal government deciding this stuff. Move it back to the state and then get involved in your state and local politics. It's almost impossible anymore to get involved at the federal level. As individuals, we have very, very little impact on what happens in the federal government anymore. It's too big. It's too much of a bureaucracy. There's too much money in federal elections. So I'd much rather see these important issues move back to the state where we can actually get involved.
Yeah, and unfortunately, even on the state side, it's becoming muddy because the big hot topic issues, they're busing people in from across the country.
I know.
To be in a state issue.
Yeah.
Yeah. Unfortunate, but I mean, that's just the reality.
Yeah. Yeah, I just wish this is such an important emotional topic. I wish people understood it better, and they never will because our media has become so corrupt that they'll do whatever they can to get their way. They don't report the news anymore. They don't try to inform people and then let people make their own decisions. They influence. They no longer inform, now they influence.
Yeah, and that whole social influencer that, they're calling it a business and all that, I can't even get my head around that.
And the thing is, influencers, influencers have always existed. We didn't call them that, but you can look back. They've always been around. We've always looked to, and I don't even like the word experts on a certain topic to help us understand a topic. What's really changed in our new social media world is now some of the biggest influencers really have no specific knowledge of much of anything. They just happen to be charismatic and entertaining. And then for some reason, because they've developed a big following, now whatever they talk about, they have followers who are influenced by them. Be very, very careful who you follow or who influences you. Make sure there's a reason. And I don't even like these words, but I'm going to use them. I follow certain people. What I mean by that is if they write a book, I'll probably read it. If they write a post or they have a show or a podcast, I'll probably listen to it. I value their opinion. But I value their opinion because I understand their background, their knowledge. I agree with most of what they say, and I want to hear more of what they have to say. There's nothing wrong with having influencers. Our world's so complicated, we need them. But be careful who you follow. I mean, just realize, why am I following them because they're really good at putting on makeup? And if makeup's important to you, then yeah, you should probably follow them. But does that also mean you should follow their political advice? You might want to question that a little bit first.
Well, I mean, all politicians, everything, they got a social presence, and I can agree with some of their statements and disagree with other ones. I don't get how people think, this guy should be our next president because he said one great thing. Well, let's look at everything he's talked about.
Right, and we've always done things like, I get it. How ridiculous is that? Honestly, people have said over the years, you should run for president. No, I shouldn't. I'd be a horrible politician. I tried it once. I sucked at it. So we say that a lot, though. We tend to look at somebody, we admire them for one thing, and then think they must be good at everything, so let's make them a president. No, honestly, I tried it. I do not have the skills to be a politician.
Yeah, and the big one right now is Elon Musk, and I don't think he has any interest in it, but it's funny how they push him into it,
I don't think he would be good at it. I don't want to see him as president. I like what he does now. Keep doing what you're doing.
No.
If he became president, everything else he does would go away. That's more than a full-time job.
And the political argument, with everything he's done, becomes political instead of what it is.
Right. So part of the problem, and I've said this forever and it's never going to change, part of the problem is our federal government's just too big. It doesn't matter who you elect anymore. It's a monster. That's what I mean. We have very, very little influence over federal politics because the whole system is broken now. It's way too big. That's why if we can't change the federal government, let's try to move as many important issues as we can down to the state level instead.
So, looking at the clock here, I believe Mike is going to be starting a show.
Ooh, right this minute. Yeah, we better go. I never thought I'd be taking up 2 hours like this today. So, all right, we're going to wrap this up and make room for Rolling Toe, Mike and Kevin Beckett. Matt, thanks for the call. Great topics. I'm going to wrap this up and get out of here so they can get in. We will see you back here tomorrow. I'm not sure what we're doing yet. I'll talk to John and Joel, see if they want to join me. It'll be a freaky free-for-all Friday either way. See you then. Be safe, be profitable, be fit and healthy. Always do the hard work and master the journey.